بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This is part 2 of our series on Matn Abi Shuja, and what we are going to be covering is fiqh al-mu'amalat. And fiqh al-mu'amalat, the English translation, let's see what they put here. Nope, I don't know what mu'amalat is in English, but it is everything that is not ibadah that you have to know, everything that you engage in, from transactions, from criminal law, from family law, to buying and selling contracts, riba, these type of things, right? We know that fiqh is divided into 4 different parts. Fiqh in general, they have, and this is how the books are authored. Whenever you open a book of fiqh, it doesn't matter what madhab, it doesn't matter what kind of book, whether it is a book that is written on all fiqh combined, the first chapters or the first category of fiqh that you find in there, it is fiqh al-ibadat, the fiqh of worship. Because to the servant, this is the most important thing that he needs to know. Through it is the rectification or the affairs of the hereafter are going to be made easy. And this is why it's always kitab al-tahara, because you can't have salah without tahara. So you begin with tahara. Then from kitab al-tahara, you go to Kitab al-Salah, you go to Kitab al-Zakah, Kitab al-Sawm, Kitab al-Hajj, because these are things that you are going to be responsible for on the Day of Judgment. The next part of fiqh that is covered when in the books of fiqh, it is fiqh al-mu'amalat, fiqh of what they call business, fiqh of transactions, fiqh of contracts, fiqh of renting, selling, leasing, buying, these type of things. Because the human being, after he meets the needs that he has for the hereafter, he has to turn and understand how he engages with the dunya. And the most important need that you have whenever you turn towards the dunya, it is they say this is the needs of the belly, right? They have to be met. And the way that they're met is through buying and selling and knowing the rules that are attached to them. The third part of fiqh, out of the 4, it is family law. So you have nikah, you have divorce, you have, who's responsible for paying, those type of things, they discuss it in family law. Then finally after that, because this is, the other needs that human beings have, finally after that you have fiqh al-jinayat, which is criminal law. Now if somebody does not fulfill what we have talked about before, what needs to happen to them, right? So in there you're going to learn about, in the Islamic court, you have laws, like some laws that when they're broken, they have to have a punishment. Who decides what those punishments are, and so on. So we are on the third type of, or the second type of fiqh that we are going to be going through. Generally, the books of fiqh are just divided into 2 parts. They say fiqh al-ibadat, the fiqh of worship, and then the fiqh of mu'amalat, where the rest of the 3 categories that we just talked about go into it. So if you, for example, this book that you have in front of you, if you went all the way to the end of it, if you went all the way to the end of the book, what you are going to have is a shahada, right, testimony, because this is what you need to establish laws in, to establish rulings on a person when it comes to criminal law. In the middle of it, you'll find, talking about nikah, talking about divorce, and so on. Hopefully, our plan is to go through this, because this is, again, a beginner's book. We took a really long time with ibadat. We're not planning to do that with this. We are going to be running through this book so that we can finish it in the next 9 weeks before the month of Ramadan. That is our plan. And the way that we are going to do it, a lot of these books are not designed like the author himself. He does not put a single ayah in here, nor does he put a hadith to tell you this is what it stands for. And the reason for that is, this is not the place to learn about those things. This is just the outline of what you need to know when it comes to these things. So the explanation, this is also how we are going to move forward with it. We're going to make it very brief for us just to understand. And really a lot of these things, you'll begin to see it yourself, that, okay, like we did in zakah, when we spoke about zakah, all of the examples that were given were examples of cows and sheep and cows and sheep and camels. These are not things that you and I really engage in, right? We don't have cows, nor do we have and stuff that we worry about giving zakah. When it comes to buying and selling, you also have almost the same concept of what did they used to trade back then and how did they used to look at. Really, for example, when we talk about riba, even though riba, it's a very big topic and it needs a lot of explanation and so on, at this level of it, you just need to know what actual riba is and how do you avoid it. How do you not engage into it? right? And then, books that we'll study later in fiqh, they go, they expand into more of, the detailed matters of these things. So for us, inshallah, we're going to be, again, like we said, running through this book, trying to finish in 9 weeks. It is longer than fiqh al-ibadat, because fiqh al-ibadat took us a long time. And that was because it's very important you understand how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But a lot of these things, they should, we just want to have a basic level understanding of it. And really what you find in the West these days is fiqh al-mu'amalat is not, generally you don't find them taught like in this manner. They no longer go to the books of fiqh and say, let us learn fiqh al-mu'amalat step by step. Because of, like when you talk about, you can't sell gold for gold, it's easy to understand that's riba. Right? It's easy to tell you that's riba, but how many of us are selling gold for gold? Right? How many of us are actually engaging? How many of us are selling, dry dates for wet dates? How many of us are buying dates? Right? How many of us look in okay, is this riba or is this not riba? And when it comes to contracts, he simplifies it really, really well. Again, this is all meant for you to be able to look at and be like, this is what it is. At the same time, as you guys were reading the title earlier, this is a book on what madhab? It's the Shafi'i madhab. Shafi'i madhab, when it comes to transactions, they are a little bit more lenient in some areas and a lot more extreme in other areas. Right? So when we get to it, and then we'll try to make sure that we understand this as it is, and we'll go from there, inshallah. Again, this is the first lesson of this new part of the text that we're learning. So it's important to remind ourselves what path we are on. This is a path that we hope through it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the path to Jannah easy for every single one of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through it, allow us to gain beneficial knowledge that will benefit us in this dunya and the hereafter. With that, we begin. Bilal, you going to read? Bismillah. So he says, Kitab al-Buyu', the chapter of al-Buyu'. Al-Buyu' in the Arabic language means to give something or to take something for another thing. Right? It is to take something, I give you something, you give me something in return for it. And then he says, وَغَيْرُهَا مِنَ الْمُعَامَلَاتِ, and also other things that fall into mu'amalat. Here you can say the entire book, this is the chapter. This is the entire chapter of the book. It's buyu' here, transactions, the rest, and whatever falls into it. But, when he goes through the other ones, he'll also give you the titles. In the Sharia, buyu' means exchanging wealth for wealth. Exchanging wealth for wealth for a certain thing that is known at a certain time that is known, right? That is what buyu' means. And buyu' here, this is the plural of the word bay'. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses, in the Quran, he uses the linguistic definition for it, and he also uses the Shar'i definition for it. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he talks to us about Yusuf alayhi salam, and he says, وَشَرَوْهُ بِثَمَنٍ بَخْسٍ دَرَاهِمَ مَعْدُودَ. That Ishtira wal bay' in the Arabic language, generally they mean the same thing, and you could flip it to mean one or the other. It means the buyer and the seller at the same time, right? The one that is selling, you could, he is engaging in buyu' in this transaction. Or for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells us about transaction being halal, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, وَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَى, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made transactions halal, and he has prohibited riba. Next part.
البيوع ثلاثة أشياء: بيع عين مشاهدة فجائز، وبيع شيء موصوف في الذمة فجائز إذا وجبت الصفة على ما وصف به، وبيع عين غائبة لم تشاهد فلا يجوز. طيب.
So he says, but transactions are of three types. Transactions are of three types. Meaning you don't get out of these three types. He says the first type, it is bay'i aynin mushahadatin. It is you buy something that you actually see and something that is there. Like it's there when you are buying it. I tell you that I'm going to sell you this watch of mine, you actually see it. And you can look at it, you can see, does it have any type of mistakes? Does it have any defects and so on? This type of selling that happens when you see it, it's halal. It is allowed to engage in this type of transaction. Then he says the next type, it is that something is mawsoof fi dhimmatin, like I explain to you what this watch is, but you don't see it. But I tell you everything about it. I'll tell you the color, I'll tell you, how big it is, what it has, all of these things. And if it is described as it is, and when you find it, it is as it is, you are able to buy it, to engage in this transaction without having a need to actually see it. Without having a need to actually see it. Right? And then he says the third type, and that is allowed. The third type, it is buying something, right? Dealing in transactions where you don't actually see the thing. Nor is it described to you in a way that you actually see it. That is not allowed. Right? For example, I can't sit here and tell you, Bilal, I'll sell you my car. Right? If I have multiple cars, I sell you my car, do you accept? And you say, I accept. You don't know what car I'm intending to sell you, nor do you have a description of the car, nor do you have, is this even a good car? What's the color of it? You don't know any of that. So if you say, I accept, is this a valid transaction? This is not a valid transaction. It is not allowed. Right? When we look at these three things that he gives, majority of our transactions, they usually always fall in either the first or the two. Rarely do you get to that last part when it comes to, gambling and stuff like that. Right? But for us, majority of the time when we buy things, we go to the store. We see what we're buying. We know the price of it, right? And we're able to buy it. Then sometimes we buy things online. We don't really see what we're buying, right? But we see pictures, we see the description of it, everything is outlined for it, and we're able to buy these things. This is buying in terms, like the general concept and the general ruling of it. Two of them are allowed, one of them is not allowed. Right? Next part.
ويصح بيع كل طاهر منتفع به مملوك.
Okay.
ولا يصح.
Keep going.
ولا يصح بيع عين نجسة ولا ما لا ينتفع فيه.
Okay. Now, he gave you the general understanding, the general breakdown of transactions in the Sharia. Now he tells you, what can you actually sell? What can actually fall into that category of you're selling something that is seen or something that is being described that is allowed? What falls into it? He says, everything that is tahir, everything that is pure, you're able to sell it. When you say tahir, you remove things that in themselves are najis. For example, we'll say a pig. A pig, is it najis or is it tahir? It's najis. Therefore, you cannot sell it because it's not najis, because it's not tahir. So anything that is not tahir, from there you would go and you would say, for example, khamr, alcohol. Can you sell it? No, because it's not tahir. You cannot sell this thing. Then you go from there, you go to, let's say the people that engage in buying drugs and selling drugs. We'll say the illegal kind for now. Is that allowed or no? No, it's not tahir. It doesn't fall into it. Not only does it have to be tahir, he says muntafa'un bih, that it has to be something that is of benefit. That is something that you actually benefit from. And this benefit here, it is not talking about what you think is beneficial, but what the Sharia thinks is beneficial. I'll give you an example. In the Shafi'i madhab, whenever you look at this point, muntafa'un bihi, what they take out, musical instruments. Musical instruments, can a person enjoy them? A person can enjoy them. That's why they buy it. You play it, you enjoy them, right? In the Sharia, can you enjoy them? No. So it is haram for you to buy musical instruments and also to sell it. Haram for you to buy and sell things that are najis. They have to be tahir and they have to be muntafa'u fi, like the Sharia has to say, this is something that is beneficial. It has to be beneficial in the Sharia. So we'll go to musical instruments, right? And then also here, like you have, when it comes to it not being tahir, and not being muntafa', you have like certain animals that fall into these categories. One of them we said is pig. The other one, in the Shafi'i madhab, what did we say? A dog. So buying dog, selling dog, not allowed. Why? Because you are not benefiting from it. Now you come and you say, the Prophet ﷺ said, a person could use a dog for 3 reasons. Right? 1 is for hunting. 2 is for guarding, like the house. And then 3 is, you guys know the black dogs? Big one. Now Sayd is hunting. Again, if you had sheep, you would know you need that German Shepherd. The reason why it has that name, this is the dog that you use for gathering the sheep or the goats or the cows and putting them into their places. The Prophet ﷺ and also the Shafi'i madhab allow a person to have these type of dogs. So how do you actually buy these things when the Sharia does not consider all dogs to be beneficial, nor does it consider them to be tahir? Right? So for that, they usually have a special chapter that talks about, you can't sell me a dog and tell me this is how much it is. But you have to give up the right that you have to that dog in exchange for if I were to give you some of it. But generally, buying things that are najis in themselves, not allowed. Buying things that the Sharia does not consider beneficial, not allowed. And the two examples, we said the pig and we said musical instruments. Now, if something you buy a thobe and it has najis on it, it has impurities, can you buy it? What do we think? Yes or no?
Buy it and wash it.
There you go. Anything that the najasa could be removed, you could buy it. Right? But if the najasa is not something that could be removed, you cannot buy it. Because this is not something that is pure for you to engage in. And then the next thing that he says it has to be mamluk. The thing that you're actually selling, you have to actually own it. You cannot sell something that you do not own. And here you have ownership that is like, this is mine. I own this. This is my clothing. I can sell this to you. I actually own it. Or it could also be that I tell our brother Bilal, I want you to take this watch and go sell it for me. You go and you sell it for me, and then we'll figure out a way that you get some wealth for the work that you're doing, and I get my, the value of what we're saying. We'll share the profit. If it's not one of these two types, you cannot sell what you do not own. For example, I can't say that, the sunglasses on Atiq's head right now, I'm going to sell it to you. I cannot say that because I don't own it, nor has he given me permission to sell it. If you accept, this is a transaction that is batil. It holds no bearing in the Sharia. Why? Because even though he's my friend, he hasn't given me permission, he hasn't put me in charge of selling his thing. Right? But if he puts me in charge of it, even though I don't own it, you're able to engage in this. Right? And this is from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, where he would even sometimes he would give wealth, like he would give some money to the companions, and he would tell them, go and buy this or go and sell this, and they would go and they would do it, and they would return back to the Prophet ﷺ. Anything that you do not own, you're unable to sell. And anything that is not in complete ownership of you, like you don't completely own it, you also cannot sell until you fully own it. For example, say I sell you a car. You see the car, you like it. We've agreed to a price. You've given me the money. In this stage, I am yet to turn over the car fully to you. You can't take that car and say, I'm going to sell it. Right? Until our transaction has been completed, it's completely done. You have the car, you own the car, I've given you the keys, then you could sell it. But if it's in the process of, I'm selling to you, you can't turn around and sell it to Muhammad until that transaction is complete, because you don't have complete ownership of it. Even if, let's say, for example, I sell you a car, we've agreed to everything, you are going to get the car not today, but 2 weeks from now. Because theoretically, you've owned the car now. Everything has been turned over to you. You could go and say, now I'm going to sell this. Now I'm going to go and sell this car. It's coming to me. And this, we'll talk about it when we get to the chapter of setup. Any questions up to here? Yes.
So about buying something that you don't know what it is or you didn't see.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're buying a box and you don't know what's in it, that's haram.
Mm-hmm.
Buy a box and they tell you there's one of 3 things in it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that halal or not?
It's haram still.
Still haram.
It's gambling. So here, when we talk about riba, he says, وَلَا يَجُوزُ بَيْعُ الْغَرَرِ You cannot buy things that there's like a major risk to it. I'll give you $10 for this box. 2 of those things are worth 30 cents. 1 of those is worth $100. I don't know what's going to be in there. I cannot buy that because I don't know what I'm buying. But I have to know what I'm actually buying from you for it to be allowed, to be a valid transaction. Right? And that is anything that is risky, anything that is, and this used to be a form of gambling that they used to do. Like when we get down a little bit, we'll understand. Like one of the things that they used to do is you would go to they used to sell palm trees. At Medina, they would have their palm trees and they would sell it. Somebody would look at it and he will guess before the fruits come to bear. He will say, I think this tree in a couple of months will produce this much, like let's say 10 pounds, even though they produce a lot, 10 pounds of dates. I'm willing to sell it to you now for the worth of 5 pounds. This is something that I don't know if it's going to produce 10 pounds, right? But he's telling me this is what it produces. Because this is so risky, it's unfair to the buyer, the person that is going to, it's halal. You have to actually know exactly what you're buying and how much you're paying for it and so on. Did that answer the question?
What if the last thing, what if the 3 things were of the same value?
Like the value that I am giving to it.
Yeah, so the box has 3 things of equal value.
$10, $10.
Only one of them was.
Only one of them are there. This is still very risky. And this is their ways of gambling back in the days. This is how they used to gamble. Right? The other things that we have to mention. This is just that he just gave us a basic introduction to buying and selling, to transactions. What you can sell, what the conditions like the person that is selling has to have, and the one that is buying it. The other thing when we look at these type of things, it's here you also get an idea, like in the second category of, let's say that I am buying, like I give you money to build me a house. And you tell me, this is what I'm going to use, this is how I'm going to build it, this is what it's going to look like, this is what's going to cost. This also falls into, even though like this is more of a contract, and we'll talk about it when we get there, this also falls under that second category of buying and selling, to where something is being described to you, which you're not going to get right away. But you still would have to pay before that time of it comes. And I think this is the basic understanding for it. Any other questions? Bismillah.
On the same lines of what Mohammed was asking, so for example, there's this company that whatever leftover food is at a restaurant, they sell it to you for a discount the next day. So you basically pay $5 and you're going to get $25 worth of bread. I don't know what bread it is, I don't know what kind it is, but you know you're going to get something of at least that value. Is that okay?
So because you don't know if you don't know what you're getting, like if I tell you I'm selling this book to you, and you know, like you could see the pages, the colors. If you don't know it like that, you cannot buy it, right? Or the description of it.
When Fa hears that it's leftover, and it makes it easy
for them to sell it.
Otherwise, it might go to waste. What are you saying?
No, not here. Because what's happening here is you don't actually know what you're going to get. Because this is like, you know,
I'm going to get
bread, but you don't know what kind of bread.
But I'm okay with
Allah, the Sharia is not okay with it. Right? Because what's happening, like the way they look at it is, I'm closing my eyes and saying whatever my hand lands on, I'm going to buy it for this price. Right? And this is something that they used to do. Like you would invite somebody into the shop back then. You're like, hey, there's a $10 entrance fee. Close your eyes. Whatever you can grab in that thing, you're going to get it for that much money. And what they used to do, like obviously the shop owner is smart. He'll put all the nice stuff in the front before you close your eyes. Pull it back once you close it. Now you pay $10, you got something that's 2 cents. Like this is what they used to engage in before. Right? So these are the things that are allowed when it comes to buying and selling. Any other questions? Okay, next part.
I think it's a little messed up. Fasl is after the next line.
Yeah, fasl. ولا يصح. Yeah. No, actually, yeah. Okay. So, let's go to riba actually, because the next one it says you cannot buy something that is like something that in itself is impure. You can't buy it, right? We talked about that. وَلَا مَا لَا مَنْفَعَةَ فِيهِ. Like anything that is not beneficial, you can also not buy it. And we said for us, the example is musical instruments. No buying, no selling. Not allowed because the Sharia does not allow them to be of benefit, right? And also other types of things that people buy and sell that the Sharia does not deem to be beneficial. And when we say the Sharia does not mean to be beneficial, this does not mean, like for example, if you have a house, you can only buy one couch for people to sit on. The other couch is not beneficial because you don't need it. That's not what it means, right? It means like is this chair right here, whether you buy 1 or 10, the Sharia deems the chair to be beneficial. So you could buy it. right? But what the Sharia does not deem to be of benefit, that you are not able to use, then it becomes haram, the buying and selling of it. And then the other thing that we should also mention here is that when it comes to transactions, we have general rulings that govern how we spend our money. For example, the Prophet ﷺ in an authentic hadith, he says that Allah kariha alaykum thalatha. Allah hates when you engage in three things. Three things you engage in, Allah hates it. He says, qila wa qal, for someone to engage in, there you go, just talking uselessly. Say, this is what they said, this is Allah hates that. Then the next one, the Prophet ﷺ, he says what he hates is وَكَثْرَةُ السُّؤَالِ, like a lot of asking useless questions. Just, what's happening? Right? You tell somebody, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about Musa alayhi salam, they were told you have to kill a cow. Khalas, you were told just kill a cow, go kill a cow. They said, can you tell us what it looks like, what it does? This is useless questions. Right? And actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he gives a warning to the ummah about questioning, he tells them, أَتُرِيدُونَ أَن تَسْأَلُوا رَسُولَكُمْ كَمَا سُئِلَ مُوسَى مِن قَبْلِ. Like, do you actually want to ask your prophet questions like Musa was asked before? Because they would just want, like, it just felt like they wanted to waste his time. He would say something, we have a question. Like this is not benefiting anybody. And then the third thing that the Prophet ﷺ, he says, وَضِيعُ الْأَمْوَالِ, the wasting of wealth. Allah hates that people, waste their wealth. These are like the general principles that we use when it comes to like how we engage in transactions. We don't waste our wealth, right? But like that's the general rule of it. And if someone decides that in their house I need to have 30 couches, because the couch itself is still beneficial in the Sharia, you wouldn't come and tell them that, hey, there's no benefit in that 28th and that 29th and that 30th thing, right? Because the Sharia, but if the Sharia deems something to be no benefit in it, khalas, there's no buying or selling. Bismillah. فصل
والربا في الذهب والفضة والمطعومات.
So he says, Fasl is chapter, right? He says, in this chapter of Kitab al-Buyu', now we're going to be talking about riba. Riba in the Shafi'i madhab only applies to three things. Only applies to three things. The three things he says, al-dhahab, gold, wal-fidda, and silver, wal-mat'umat, and the things that you eat. If things are outside of these, the Shafi'i madhab does not consider them to be acts of riba or transactions that involve riba. Al-dhahab wal-fidda obviously means like actual gold, and also what took the place of gold in our times. In those times, money, right? In the times before, you didn't have these paper money or notes that you would use to buy things. You actually had to have the gold coin or the silver coin, and it determined, like the value that they put to the gold determined how many things you can buy. So you have that, and then anything that the people eat, whether it is from the fruits, whether it is from vegetation, or whether it is from the animals. When you engage in business transactions with them, that's when you have to worry about riba. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, during his khilafah, he used to make it a condition upon the people that if they wanted to sell things, that they had to understand the rulings of transactions. One of them, he would make sure that they understood what riba was. Because you cannot be in the marketplace engaging in riba, because if people are engaging in riba, the next person is going to do it, the one after is going to do it, all of us are going to be destroyed. Right? So he would make sure that, especially to this chapter, that they paid a lot of attention to understand what riba was, especially during those times. Because in our times, when, for example, I buy fruits, I don't go to Safeway, grab a pack of oranges for my house and tell them, hey, I want bananas for these. I don't do that. Right? I don't take grapes and say, hey, I want, I use money for it. Right? But in those times, this is what used to happen. Somebody would come and say, hey, I like your dates more than mine. I like the place your dates grow. Here, take these dates and give me your dates. And this would be where like riba would be introduced and so on. And so he says, in the Shafi'i madhab, these are the three things that generally we talk about. Actually, we'll say two things now. Right? Because dhahab and fidda, we'll look at it just as wealth today. We'll look at it as money. But if we do have, like there are some where this is going to apply to, if someone has silver and they're trying to sell it, if someone has gold and they're trying to sell it, when does it become riba and so on. Bismillah.
ولا يجوز بيع الذهب بالذهب ولا الفضة كذلك
إلا متماثلا نقدا ولا بيع ما ابتاعه حتى يقبضه ولا بيع اللحم بالحيوان ويجوز بيع الذهب بالفضة متفاضلا نقدا.
So he says when it comes to gold, you cannot sell gold for gold. You cannot sell gold for gold. Also, that means for us, you cannot sell money for money. Okay, you cannot sell money for money. First question is, how do you sell money for money? In those times, what they used to do when it came to gold, it's, if you have the gold that is the coins that you use for transactions, but then you also have gold that is like wearable gold, right? You have the earrings, you have the necklace. Can I sell, if I have earrings, can I take this and sell it for gold bracelets or for a gold necklace or for silver and so on? You cannot do that unless, and he says here, وَالْفِضَّةُ كَذَلِكَ إِلَّا مُتَمَاثِلًا نَقْدًا, that when you are actually buying it, they're the same. Meaning that if I have earrings of gold, let's say someone has earrings of gold, right? For your wife, let's say my wife has earrings of gold. Right? If she has earrings of gold and she wants to get bracelets, and these earrings of gold, let's say, are 20 grams of gold, and they're of this type of gold, I can go to Atiq and say, there's these gold bracelets, can I get 20 grams of them? The conditions that have to be met, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, الذهب بالذهب والفضة بالفضة والشعير بالشعير والتمر بالتمر والبر بالبر. He says they have to be متماثلان ويدا بيد. Like it has to happen in this transaction of ours, 20 grams of gold, 20 grams of gold of one type, 20 grams of gold of yours one type, then we could sell it to one another there. And this is what mutamathil, like they have to be the same. If we are using gold, like kilos, or we're using grams, you also have to use the same, right? When you're buying and selling. I can't tell you that, hey, I'm going to give you 20 gold earrings and you give me 3 bracelets. Because that's not how we engage in selling gold. Today, when you go and you buy gold, the first thing they ask you, they tell you this is how many carats it is, this is the value of 1 gram of it. So we have to use this weighing system whenever we are selling it. And it also has to be something that like actually happens while you are having, this is why he says, وَلَا بَيْعُ مَبْتَاعُهُ حَتَّى like you can't actually even sell this until you own it. Until you come in complete possession of it, I can't give you these things. So when it comes to gold and when it comes to silver, you can't exchange one for the other, except that they are the same in quantity if you're using numbers, right? And this is determined by culture. For gold and silver today, we don't use numbers, but we use the weight. There are some types of fruits, if you were like in those times that they would sell, they would say 5 of these dates for 5 of these dates. Here you don't use weight, you would use the numbers, and the customs are going to be what determines what that is. Anytime that you don't fulfill these 2 conditions, you have engaged in riba. You've engaged in riba. If you sell gold for gold, and I give you 20 earrings for 3, because the value is different, this is riba. And really what riba means in the Arabic language, it means whenever something grows, whenever something increases, without not like really a lot of effort, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the linguistic version, like the linguistic meaning of it, He says to us, وَتَرَى الْأَرْضَ حَامِدَةً فَإِذَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْهِ الْمَاءَ اهْتَزَّتْ وَرَبَتْ. Right? When you see like the ground is very dry and so on, but when we send the water to it, you see it begins to crack. Like it begins to open up, warabat, and then like you see the fruits that come from it, the trees, the vegetation that come out of it, like you see an increase of what it used to be. So if I sold you gold for gold, there's a fear that if we are not very clear on the fact that we're using grams, and I'm telling you 3 gold earrings for 1 bracelet, there's a lot of, like someone is getting more than what they should be getting. And therefore that is riba. Right? And then the next thing he says, وَلَا بَيْعُ اللَّحْمِ بِالْحَيَوَانِ. You cannot buy meat, or you cannot use meat to buy an animal, or use an animal to buy meat. What does this even mean? This is what it means. What they used to do, when you look at the animal, when you look at a sheep, you can, like, today we can put it on a scale and say this is how much it weighs. And out of this, how much it weighs, it should give me like this amount of it is usable meat that I'm able to use, right? If I come to you and say your sheep looks to be 20 pounds, again, much bigger, these are 200, 300 pounds. it looks like it's 20 pounds. Let me give you 10 pounds of already processed meat that I have, that I just slaughtered, let's say even a couple of days ago. Let me give this to you for that sheep. That's not allowed. Why? Because the value of that sheep is greater than just the meat value of it. Because I can decide to keep it. I can decide to keep this, and then guess what? Now it has a baby. I am taking the wealth that you had, like I unfairly took out of it. Right? One of the practices that they used to do back in the days, this would be one of the things, that I slaughtered the meat too early, but I actually need the animal. Like I need it for grazing, or I need it for riding, I need it for these different type of things. And I have the meat, but I want the actual animal. So here, you take the meat, let me take the animal. That's what they used to engage in. The Sharia does not allow this, because you will never come to a fair price between this animal, like this, the value of the meat to this animal that you're having, and there's an increase that a person is getting over the other person, and therefore that is riba. But there is, like, if you were to take the skin of the animal and then tan it, they say that this has been removed from being lahm, from being like from of it, so you could use like tanned skin of the animal to buy an animal, right? But actual meat of it, or actual things that there's still, like, it hasn't gone through that process, you cannot use it to buy an animal. And then he says after, وَيَجُوزُ الْبَيْعُ الذَّهَبِ بِالْفِضَّةِ مُتَفَاضِلًا نَقْدًا. Now, take this and apply it to every type of fruit also. Take it to apply to every, if the type of thing that you are selling are different, then you can do it. The only thing that you have to do it is we have to complete the transaction at the same time. They don't have to be the same. What I mean by this, the example, he says it's allowed for you to buy gold or to sell gold for the price of silver, and you can increase it however much you want. I can tell, like right now, let's say that 100 grams of silver equals 1 gram of gold, calculations wise. I can come to you and say, I'll sell you this 100 for 10 grams of gold. 100 grams of silver for 10 grams of gold. If you accept this is something that is allowed, because these are two different things. So for example, I come to you with fruits. I want dates from you, and I tell you, you know what? I will give you 10 pounds of oranges for 30 pounds of dates. Even though if we were to do it oranges to oranges, it's riba. In this case, it is not riba, because these are two different things, and the value that they have, as long as you agree to it, then this is allowed for you to do it. And then he also says, وَكَذَلِكَ الْمَطْعُومَاتِ. Also, when it comes to the vegetables, the same rulings apply. That لَا يَجُوزُ بَيْعُ الْجِنْسِ مِنْهَا بِمِثْلِهِ إِلَّا مُتَمَاثِلًا نَقْدًا. Like, you can't sell dates for dates, unless they are like, 5 pieces of dates for your 5 pieces of dates. Right? Whether they're dry or not, 5 pieces for 5 pieces, and it happens like in this engagement that we are having. Right? And then afterwards he says, but you could take one type of like one type of things that you eat for another type that are not similar, and you are free to choose what the value that you place on it. Right? You could say, you know what, this muffin that I have here, I will sell it to you for 10 pounds of grapes. And you are free to accept or free to reject. But when you accept it, khalas, this transaction is valid. But if you had another muffin and I tell you, I'll sell you this muffin for your muffin, no. This is the same thing. Right? You can't increase to it, and so on. And then the last thing that he mentions, and we'll stop here, he says, وَلَا يَجُوزُ بَيْعُ الْغَرَرِ. You can, haram for you to engage in risky business, like business that you are unsure of the value of what you are getting. Right? Gharar is really, like there's deception that is involved in terms of you understanding what you're getting, or in terms of what you are selling. So the example that we were given of, hey, here's a box. The stuff in here, value from this to this. All you have to do is pay the price that's in the middle. You don't know it, right? Or you go to a tree, or you go to a farm and you say, you have 100 trees. You have 100 trees. I will buy 10 of these trees, what they produce, the fruits that they produce, a couple months from now for this amount. No, because this is very risky. What happens if you give them the money and all of those trees that you pointed to are dead? Too risky, and it's unfair to you. And really, the Sharia, when it comes to the wealth of the people, it protects both the wealth of the seller and the wealth of the buyer. It is from the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made sacred. Right? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his farewell message, one of the things that he mentions, he says, that he says, إن دماءكم وأموالكم إن دماءكم وأموالكم وعرضكم حرام كحرمة يومكم هذا في شهركم هذا في بلدكم هذا. That your wealth, your honor, your blood, it's been sanctified. Like the sanctity of this day of yours, the day of Arafah, like the sanctity of this month of yours, the month of Dhul Hijjah, and the sanctity of this place that you're in, Mecca. This is the khutbah that he gave when he performed his farewell Hajj. So the Sharia places a lot of emphasis on the preserving of one's wealth, that a person does not waste it. And it is one of those things that we are going to be asked about on the Day of Judgment. So engaging in transactions that are risky, that you don't know what you are getting, right? You don't know the value that you're putting in, is not allowed in the Sharia.